Welcome to Moon Harbor Heroes. Today's issue is Faces, issue 21. His heart is heavy, but she's not here yet. On the cover, Carl stands in the clearing in his mind sanctuary. He glows a bright blue and looks out over the beautiful forest. Down a dark path, we see a single pink butterfly fluttering into the distance. In the far distance, towering over the treetops, we see the iron spire from the fields of hell. We turn the page to a quick editor's note. This issue was created with a combination of Masks: A New Generation and a game Anthony, wrote called My Feet Are Tired, But I'm Not There Yet. If you want to check out that game, you can find it on icynewyear.itch.io for pay what you want or free. So now we turn the page and our story begins. So our first panel is a full-page shot of Faye, unconscious, laying in the same cot that we had Ryder on a while back. And Carl, how are you in that scene?
I think I'm next to Faye, and I'm starting to get worried a bit, because it's clear to me that this is not just like a normal thing.
So what do you do?
So what's going on with Carl is that he wasn't really worried about Faye being gone, because there were a lot of signs that she was still around. But then now those signs, with Faye collapsing, those signs started to rapidly decrease. And so he's worried that something really bad is going on, and he can't feel Faye anymore. So what he does is that he decides to try and communicate with her. And the way in which that happens is that when Bert was in the hospital and wasn't reacting, he noticed that he could just take Bert into his hive mind, and then they could still chat with each other. And so even if the doctors were worried, he never was. So he's going to try to do the same thing with Faye. And he puts his hand on Faye and takes her into the hive mind. And with that, we're transported into Carl's hive inner mind. So the way that Carl's hive mind looks at the moment is that it's this giant sprawling landscape, and there's this forest, and everything has this blue tint to it. And in the past, in the forest, there would be hundreds of pink butterflies in the distance, but they're all gone now, and there's just, he goes looking and he finds just the one pink butterfly.
The one pink butterfly, I think, is like floating kind of in the middle of the field by the forest, and then it starts to flit away from you towards the tree line. Then it goes into the tree line and goes behind a tree and disappears. What do you do?
I'm going to keep walking in the direction where it was, and assume that it's pointing me in a direction or something.
Excellent. As you step through the tree line and then kind of turn around the bend that it turned around, you are suddenly no longer in your forest. You are in a very, very dark landscape. The sky above you is rolling purple sky. Big dark clouds cover most of it up. It's not like a pretty purple, it's like a dark, violent purple. Really jagged, rocky landscape. And there's a pretty massive metal spire jutting out of the ground, not directly in front of you, but in the distance in front of you, pretty far away. And we are going to draw our first card. You see the pink butterfly pretty far in the distance, over towards this tower. It's basically just a speck now. You've got a pretty big stretch to cross to get there.
What is the surface like? What is my footing?
Yeah, it's rocky. You can walk on it. It's not impassable terrain, but there are jagged rocks kind of sticking up out of the ground, kind of all over the place. Rock outcroppings. There are what look like trees made out of wrought iron as well, tree trunks that are made of this iron material, but they have no leaves on them. They're just these sharp, jagged tree trunks growing up out of nowhere.
I think Carl steals his resolve and keeps walking in the direction of the butterfly.
Great. As you do, you see there's like a blur of motion somewhere to your left. It's a little too fast for you to catch what it is, but there's something moving. And then after a moment,
Uh,
there's another one to your right.
I'm going to keep walking in the direction of the butterfly.
As you're walking, you come across a small, it almost looks like a cat, except it is hairless. It's still like pitch black like a cat would be, but it is hairless and it has like 6 eyes. And when it opens its mouth, you can see there's actually like a second internal mouth inside. And it's got 4 normal cat legs, and then growing out of its back, there are what look like 4 spider legs that like grow, and it walks on all 8 legs. And it turns and looks up at you, and it's just chilling in front of you.
I think Carl's resolve is still strong enough that he's going to try and pet the spider cat.
You lean down to pet the spider cat, and as you do, it turns up at you, and its eyes are glowing pink, much like Faye's do. As you reach your hand out to touch it, it shatters into stained glass right in front of you. And the pieces float in the shape of a spider cat and then just drift off as like a wind blows through. And then you keep walking.
As you walk, you kind of pass an outcropping, and you see Faye sitting there on the ground. She doesn't look up at you. She doesn't acknowledge you at all. She's sitting and she's meditating, and you can see what look like the phantoms of like books floating around her. This doesn't look like it's really happening. There's something kind of faded about it. The edges are all kind of blurred, but Faye is there, and these books are floating around her in a panel very, very reminiscent of the Faye meditation panels we saw back when she was really in control of her powers.
I'm going to slowly walk over and sit down in front of her and just do nothing and wait.
As you're looking at her, you see in this same like faded out, not real kind of look, this like black shadow grows out from her shadow and then is just towering over her.
I'm going to stand up, and is this form of Fae, is it corporeal? Like if I touch it, can I hold it?
Are you reaching to touch it, or is that just like question like based on appearance?
No, I'm reaching to touch it. Yeah.
Your hand goes right through it. But as it does, the shadow's eyes, which are bright red, snap and look at you. And then it opens its mouth, and there's this huge yellow, like sharp, jagged tooth grin. And it speaks, but it speaks with Faye's voice, and it says, "Hello, Carl."
It's not you I'm looking for, is it?
It shakes its head, and it says, "No, but I don't know that you'll find what you're looking for. I think she's probably too lost." And then it waves its like large claw, and the like phantom shadow of Faye just disappears.
I'm going to ignore the shadow and just keep walking in the direction of the butterfly.
As you walk, there's suddenly like a burst of like steam, smoke, not in front of you, but nearish to you. As it clears, you can see that where it came from is this like pool. There's this like pool of greenish liquid, and in the reflection of it, you can see Ryder standing there. And it's clearly a memory that Faye has. It's the memory of the very first fight that you all had as a team, where Ryder and Faye were fighting together. You guys were fighting Fat Chance, and it's the moment where Faye and Ryder are fighting together and don't realize that AM has just been killed. So you see the moment where she looks down and she sees Ryder fighting with her, and then she turns and she sees AM, and then everything just kind of freezes all around you as AM like reaches her hand out of the pool and pulls herself up, and she's standing next to you. And she looks at you and she says, "Are you going to be able to save her?"
Carl thinks for a long moment, and he says, I have to.
AM takes your hand and she says, "Please do. She's fragile. All of this, it's all broken, it's all wrong. Go get her." And then she points towards the tower.
Thank you. And I turn around and walk in towards the spire.
She nods, and as she does, she just collapses and like turns into that same like green watery liquid.
And I keep walking.
You're pretty close to the tower now, to the wrought iron spire, but you've got to like go down into like a little pit before you can get to it. There's like a dip down, and then you have to come up to the entrance. And as you go down into that pit, you see a little girl sitting there. You recognize her as Alana when she's a kid. She's probably 5, 6, and she's playing jacks and eating, notably, ants on a log, which is the like celery with peanut butter and raisins on it. And as you walk past, she looks up at you and she says, she's got like a whole plate of them and a bunch of jacks. And she's like, "Do you want to play?"
Of course I do. And I sit down in front of her.
She offers you the ball, and then she holds up the plate and she says, "Do you want some ants?"
No, thank you, but it's really nice for asking.
She takes a really big bite and like peanut butter gets all over her face. And she's like, "I love ants. They're one of my favorite animals."
They're one of mine too. And I smile.
And then she kind of like lays back and she's like, "I like all bugs. I like ants and beetles and butterflies." And then she sits up and looks at you. And then she says, in her like adult voice, she says, "Carl?" And the jacks just start to float in the air.
I look at the little girl and I say, do you want to meet a friend of mine?
She nods.
I take her hand and try to step outside with her.
Step outside, like out of the mind here.
Yeah, back to the surface.
As you try, you get this intense swarming feeling, like things are crawling all over you. And you look back and you see that she is just like dissolving where she stands. It doesn't look like it's causing her any pain. She just looks very confused. And then she's like, "No, I can't go there yet. I can't leave yet. There's something that we just haven't finished yet. You haven't finished the game." And then there's this like crack and she just turns into thousands of jacks and they all just fall to the ground.
And I'm going to keep walking.
You're now at the entrance to the tall tower, the wrought iron tower. And as you open the door, you see Supai standing there. And you've met, actually, I don't know if you've met Supai before. Oh, yes, you have, because they were there for the fight on the beach.
Yeah, we haven't really spoken, but we were at the same fight.
They look a little different than they normally do. They are not in their superhero costume. They are very gaunt. Their skin is very, like, pulled back. And something looks very off about them. And they say, "You're not supposed to be this far. You're not supposed to be here. You don't belong here." And they put out their hand and a tendril of fire just like shoots from it. Not at you, but it's just like whip-like waving in their hand. "Go home, Carl. This is not your job."
Carl just looks at Supai and says, "I don't belong anywhere, and I was never even supposed to be, so that's fine." And then he red tiger stripes form around his face, and he turns into a flaming image.
Cool. Are you attacking him? What are you doing there?
It's more like a come and get me thing, like if you're gonna stand in the way, but I'm not threatening to do anything.
They look at you and they're like, "I don't want to have to hurt you. Not here. I need you to turn around before we fight."
You don't have to do anything. Everybody's got a choice. And my choice was just to keep walking. And I put one step forward.
Their eyes kind of widen and they look like they want to say something. And then there's this like ear-piercing like shriek of pain. It's not coming from their mouth, but you can tell it's coming from them because weird brain logic. It's like echoing all around them. And they like bring their hands down and kind of like curl up. And they're like, "No, I can't hurt Carl. I can't hurt them. No, you can't." And then when they open their eyes up, their eyes are glowing pink. And you see their fingers just start to elongate into what you recognize as the demon claws that Faye often has. And they open their mouth to speak, and their jaw just like elongates and unhinges. And you see Supai starting to take on the form of Faye's demon. And then the demon says, "Don't go any further."
I smile and The flames fade away, and I step forward and I hug the demon.
Cool. Can you roll to comfort or support for me?
Sure. Mundane rolls are always a really good roll for Carl. That's a 1.
That is a 1. You feel the creature like shudder in your arms, and then you feel the claws just dig into your back. And it pulls back. And instead of it being the demon's face, it's Faye's face. But it's like distorted and inhuman. And it looks like Faye plus demon mixed together. Faye's voice says, "You really are cute, aren't you? Trying to come all this way to save me. When I left you here, I didn't even tell you where I was going. I broke your heart, and then I went to hell. And I think I'd still rather be there. Why do you even care? Why do you bother?" Go ahead and roll to take a powerful blow for me.
That's a 6.
Great. Tell me how you weather the blow.
I think it's visually clear that Carl is in pain and that he's maybe distraught. But all the same, he still takes on a big smile and tries to take a step forwards.
Like through the demon? Like past the demon?
Yeah, just past it.
It pulls back and gets like really close to your face, and it's like, you want to walk away from this? You want to leave Faye here? Turn around, go back. And then you just walk past it. And it doesn't follow you. It's just like calling after you and taunting you with Faye's voice. And being generally pretty terrible, saying things like, "She doesn't care that much about you. She never did. She left you. Go on, chase your pink butterfly." And then you're at the big like wooden door of this wrought iron building.
Is it locked in any way?
Nope.
Is there a keyhole?
Yep.
I'm going to peek through the keyhole.
Inside, you see another one of those like hazy edged memory things that you saw from earlier. And you see Alana and Cruz just like moving around inside. They both look a little bit worse for wear, but not as bad as you've seen them recently. And they have like books in languages you can't read, and they're drawing things on walls, and like you see them like trying to figure out what's going on. You cannot see anything they're drawing, and they don't seem to notice you.
I'm going to open the door and step inside.
Faye turns to you, and like her eyes lock with yours, and she's like, "No, wait, no, I'm not done yet. I can't go back yet. We haven't figured it out yet. I don't know how to beat it."
You need any help?
She looks at you and she says, "Yeah, downstairs. There's a forge, and if you go down there, there's something down there that I need, but I don't know what it is, but I know that I need it."
I'd say nothing more, and I just turn to the downstairs and start walking.
Great. Because this is dream logic, the next panel is you like immediately landing downstairs on the next floor down. Actually several floors down. You get to skip a pretty extensive distance. And you're in a room, and there are these giant chains on the wall, and they're all pulled taut over to like the side of the room, and that entire side of the room is in shadow. But there's definitely something that these chains are all attached to in that corner.
I'm going to start a flame in my hand and try to illuminate the shadow.
So these chains are massive. These chains also extend like all the way up out of the, like through the ceilings up out of the room. And they are all attached to, as you illuminate, you see the figure of Faye. As you saw her most recently, she is emaciated. She is cut up. She is bruised. She is scarred. Her clothes are tattered and ripped. She is dirty. She is wild-eyed and weak-looking. And all of these huge chains are like locked around her wrists and her waist and her thighs, and she's just like restrained, but she's got full range of this room, but she's just like huddled in this corner.
I'm going to sit down next to her and take her hand.
She pulls her hand back, and she won't even look up at you. Like her eyes are still in that same shadow, and she's like, "Carl, go away. Everyone leaves, and I don't want you to see me like this."
Then I'll look away. And I just sit in the same place, but I avert my eyes.
I think we get a couple panels of the two of you sitting in silence. And then in the panel after that, we see the automatopoeia of like crying coming from her direction. And she looks up at you and she's like, "Am I a monster? Is that what's happening here? Am I officially the monster?"
Monsters are a lot of fun.
She sniffles and kind of laughs. And then she's like, "But I don't want to be a monster anymore. I just want to go home, but I can't. I don't even know what home looks like. I can't picture it in my mind. Every time I try to picture anywhere else, it's just here in this hell dimension. I can't get out, Carl. I need help."
I can help you find it, but in my mind, home is wherever you are.
You hear a moment where the chains kind of rattle, and then you see in the shadow, we see a panel like over your shoulder, and her shadow is now standing up over top of you, and she's like, "You're right. Home is wherever I am. Home is wherever we are, wherever our family is. Carl, can you help get me back to our home?"
Of course I can. What do you want me to do?
She looks at you and she's like, "I can't leave." And she gestures to the chains that are like now somehow even more encircling, more like overwhelming on her really frail and falling apart body.
Can I see where the chains lead to, or are they just coming from everywhere?
It seems like there's 6 primary chains and they are all going up through the walls. They like lead over to these big hooks on the walls and then extend up through the ceiling.
What happens if I grab the chain? I'm going to try to grab one of the chains.
Cool, go ahead and roll to unleash your powers.
That's a 5.
As you pull on it, it seems like it's not giving, but not because you're not pulling, because like it seems like there's way more force coming from Faye than Faye is currently pulling. Like you can't pull against her strength. And then she looks at you and she says, "Just melt the chains off. Just get them off me. I don't want them on me anymore. Please just get them off."
I think I'm going to go into my flame form again and try again with fire this time.
I'm going to say that you can pretty easily melt these chains. And Faye slumps down, and you hear her crying, and she's like, "Carl, Carl, I'm so sorry. Carl, no, you shouldn't have. I just can't." And then there's this hideous laughter coming from this body. And when you look at her, her body just like cracks and expands, and like her shoulder blade like bends backwards. And we see like 8 or 9 panels of this hideous transformation, and then standing there is the demon that Faye has always not wanted to become. And the demon starts pacing around you in this room, slowly, very, very methodically, and says, "You really shouldn't have let me out, you know? There's a reason Faye keeps me chained up down here."
Well, maybe you shouldn't have let me in.
The demon smiles, and it's this huge, hideous smile, and says, "Maybe not. Now let's see which one of us gets to leave. What do you want to do?"
I guess I'm already in my flame form, right? I'm going to attempt to shoot fire at it.
Great. Roll to directly engage a threat.
That's an 8.
On a 7 to 9, you can choose one.
I'm going to try to frighten the beast.
You definitely do frighten it. Tell me what that looks like on the panel.
Carl takes on the golem form, which is a lot less human, and he shoots a fireball at the demon, and shouts, "I guess we'll find out who the biggest monster here is, huh?"
The fireball hits the demon hard, and the demon had been like launching towards you and gets like knocked aside. And it looks up at you and it says, "Well, that's a new one. We haven't seen that side of you yet." And it's saying it with a lot of confidence, but you can see in its eyes that it's like kind of surprised and not, it wasn't prepared for this kind of attack. And it gets back up and you can see the like scorch marks running up its white coat. And then it looks at you and says, "Our turn now." And the air on either side of you shatters into the portals that you've seen before. Phase like stained glass portals. And through them, on one side, you can see Bert. And it's this image of Bert standing in his home. And then all of a sudden he clutches his heart and falls down to his knees. And he like reaches for his phone, but he falls down and can't reach it. And on the other side, you see Ryder fighting off against some unseen foe. And then you see from the back of Ryder, he's fighting, and then all of a sudden a sword just juts through his chest, and he falls back. I want you to roll to take a powerful blow for me.
8.
Excellent. On a 7 to 9, you can choose one.
I'm going to struggle past the pain and take 2 conditions. Think I'm going to pick guilty and angry.
Excellent. How many conditions do you have marked now?
I have 3, and one of them is +1 to powerful blows.
Excellent. Cool. Tell me how you struggle past the pain. What does that look like on the panel?
I think Carl is looking at the images of Bert and Ryder, and there's an immense sense of sadness, but then that's quickly replaced with indignation and anger, and you can see the fire intensifying.
I'm going to tell you that much anger will probably overwhelm the demon, so as the fire builds, tell me what that looks like what does it look like as this fire builds?
I think it starts out from the center of Carl, from his heart, and it fans out, and I think it forms the shape of butterfly wings, and then starts enveloping the room.
Awesome. That looks so cool. And as these wings open up and the whole room is illuminated, you can see a small, you didn't notice it before, but there was a doorway kind of behind where Faye had been sitting before Faye turned into this demon. And there's a doorway now past the demon that you get the sense that it is very, very important.
I think at this point, I'm going to attempt to charge my Nova burn.
Cool. Go ahead and roll to charge your burn.
Okay, so that's a 9. So I mark another condition, and I get 3 burn. I think that's how it works.
If you want, you can spend a team or have Faye spend a team, the brain that is Faye, spend a team to push that up to a 10.
Sure.
Cool. So tell me what it looks like as you charge your burn.
Okay, so I'm going to try something different here, but I think as the room is enveloping in flame, there's one area of the room that's not lighting up, and it's where Faye's trapped form was sitting, and I noticed that it's Faye's tears, and they're not burning. So Carl walks over there and touches the tears, and as he touches them, his form changes from a fire form into a water form, and Carl turns into this vortex of water.
Perfect. I love that image. That's beautiful. I think the demon kind of recoils backwards from this torrent of water that is rushing through the room, and you now have an opening to get to the door if you'd like to get to the door.
Yeah, I'm gonna step through the door.
Cool. As you step through the door, suddenly you're not in the basement anymore. You're now in Faye Sanctuary. It doesn't look like it was when you left it, all books everywhere. This is Faye Sanctuary at its cleanest, and Faye is sitting at a table with one computer in front of her. One book in front of her. And she's just flipping through it. And she looks up at you and she says, "Hey."
Carl smiles. You see this big classic Carl grin and goes, "I think it's finally you this time, isn't it?"
She looks at you and she says, "I think so. It's all really confusing in here. Everything in here is me and nothing in here is me. And then there's the demon, which is also me, but not me. I don't know. It's been a while. Hey."
Hey, so I was on TV and there was a volcano and I turned into the volcano, and I can turn into fire now, but I can also turn into water, and I don't quite get it. And I have a new friend that I want you to meet, and oh god, do you want to get out of here?
She looks up at you and she nods and she says, "Yeah, I want to go home."
I reach out my hand.
As she takes your hand, you see this swarm of visions of a bunch of the memories of the two of you. So the two of you flying through the air together, the two of you at the power plant as you wreaked havoc. The kiss falling onto the table. We see the scene in the kitchen where the two of you are talking at Ryder's house. We see the scene where she kisses you and then steps backwards through the portal the last time you saw her. And then the two of you are just standing back in your field by your forest.
I imagine that the forest is now full of pink butterflies again.
She smiles and puts her hand out, and one lands on her finger. And she looks and she says, "Is this because of me?"
I don't know what this is. I'm trying to figure it out. But I have a friend who's helping me figure it out. You want to meet him?
She nods.
I think at that point there's a massive rumbling sound, and there's something new in the forest, but in the distance there's a mountain that suddenly erupts, and there's a volcano. And from the direction of the volcano comes this giant ball that's 10 stories high, and it's pushed by a giant dung beetle. Carl looks at Faye and says, "I was waiting for you to come back so you could give him a name. What do you think his name should be?"
She smiles and she says, "I think his name is Hope."
I think that's an excellent name.
And with that, I think there's a moment where you see her, and all of a sudden she blinks out of existence in the forest. And then you hear, in the real world, you hear coughing and sputtering.
Carl takes one final look at the dung beetle and says, "Well, I guess I'll be seeing you around, Hope," and exits the dreamscape and grabs Faye's hand.
Faye throws her arms around you, and she's sobbing, tears running down her face. And she says, "Thank you. Thank you so much."
Moon Harbor Heroes is produced by Anthony Sheets and TP Huth, and edited by Anthony Sheets. Anthony can be found on Twitter at Icy New Year, or at icynewyear.com. T is the host of Incubator on Air, a new play podcast available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Play. She can be found at T Huth Playwright on Twitter, or TPHuth94 on Instagram. Faces is GM by me, Anthony Sheets. Lighthammer is played by TP Huth. Ryder Typhon is played by Kaido Kane. Kaido is a Twitch personality and loves their 3 mischievous cats. You can find them at the Versian on Twitter, and as Kaido Kane on Twitch.tv. Our logo was designed by Beautiful Beasties. She can be found on Instagram at beastly.doodles or at patreon.com/beautifulbeasties. The music in this issue is Black Vortex by Kevin MacLeod. A link to his website and the license will be in the show notes. If you want to get a hold of us, email us at moonharborheroes@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at moonharborcast. If you enjoyed this issue, please leave us a review on iTunes and tell a friend. Word of mouth and 5-star reviews are really the best way for us to keep bringing these stories to more people. If you'd like to support us financially, check us out on patreon.com/moonharborheroes. Supporting us there will give you access to bonus episodes each month. And thanks for helping us save the world. We'll see you next issue.